My fiancé secretly altered our prenup to hijack my tech empire. I scrapped the wedding and took back my future. It's funny how quickly your whole world can tilt on its axis. How the person sleeping next to you can become a stranger overnight. For 12 years, I'd poured every ounce of my being into Innovatech Solutions. It started in a cramped garage, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a vision for an AI logistics platform called Nightingale that everyone said was impossible. Now, Nightingale was industry-leading, and Innovatech was my pride, my legacy, the livelihood of over 200 employees. It wasn't just a company. It was a testament to sacrifice and relentless belief. Then there was Chloe. We'd met 4 years ago, a whirlwind of charm and laughter. And for the last year, she'd worn my ring. She was a marketing exec for a lifestyle brand, vibrant, and I thought, incredibly supportive. I genuinely believed she was it for me. 2 years back, when she was still struggling with a hefty student loan, I'd paid it off, around 30 grand without a second thought. It felt good to lift that burden for her. For wedding planning, I set up a joint account, and I gave her an emergency credit card, a platinum Amex with a $20,000 limit, stressing it was for true emergencies only. "Of course, Alex," she'd said, her eyes wide and sincere. I'd never abused that. Given the value of Innovatech, a prenup was a non-negotiable, a practical necessity. My lawyer, Brenda, a sharp, no-nonsense woman I'd trusted for years, and Liam, my CFO and best friend since college, both insisted on it. I explained it to Chloe carefully, focusing on protecting the company, our employees, and ensuring fairness. "Alex, whatever you think is best," she'd replied, her hand on my arm. "I trust you completely. My love isn't about money." Her words were like balm to my pragmatic concerns. About 6, maybe 8 months before everything imploded, Chloe's older brother, David, drifted back into her life. He was 42, charismatic enough on the surface, but there was an oiliness to him, an undercurrent of bitterness that set my teeth on edge. He spun tales of his failed businesses and his 2 divorces, always casting himself as the noble victim screwed over by circumstance or predatory ex-wives. Chloe, bless her heart, lapped it up. "David's just had such bad luck," she'd say. "He's so worldly wise because of it." Soon the subtle shifts began. Chloe started asking these incredibly specific questions about Innovatech, Nightingale's profit margins, our Q4 projections, which investors were showing serious interest. Liam even mentioned it after one dinner. "Chloe's suddenly very keen on EBITDA, Alex. Bit odd for casual conversation, isn't it?" Her spending ramped up too. New designer bags, spa weekends, essential upgrades to her wardrobe, all chalked up to, "We need to project an image of success, honey. David says it's crucial for our future." That phrase, David says, became the new soundtrack to our lives. Around this time, Innovatech had a couple of strange, minor IT glitches. A server slowed down inexplicably while we were prepping a crucial demo for a potential client, and an internal memo about a sensitive new project module was briefly misdirected. Liam and I beefed up internal security, writing it off as growing pains, but a small, disquieting alarm bell went off in my mind. David, during one of his visits, had clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Big company, big problems, Alex? You look stressed. A man in your position needs a strong partner to help him manage all the details." Then came the prenup review. Chloe, all sweetness and light, suggested David's brilliant lawyer friend could give our prenup draft, the one Brenda had meticulously prepared, a quick look. "Just for my own understanding, darling," she'd cooed, "to make sure it's all standard, you know. I wanted to be reasonable to show trust." "Sure," I said, but I immediately called Brenda. "Heads up," Brenda had warned, her voice tight. "This could be where the games begin. Keep your eyes wide open, Alex." If only I'd known how wide. A few weeks passed. The wedding plans were chugging along, or so I thought. One Tuesday night, I was working late, remotely accessing a shared cloud drive we'd set up for wedding vendor contracts and guest lists. My eyes were tired, and I was about to log off when a new subfolder caught my attention. It was oddly named Future-Proofing _us. My stomach gave a little lurch. Curiosity, or maybe a premonition, made me click. Inside, a single document, prenup underscore CK underscore revisions underscore V3 underscore confidential. Confidential? From whom? Me? My blood ran cold before I even opened it. When I did, the world tilted. This wasn't a prenup, it was a corporate rating plan. The changes were breathtaking in their audacity. 45% of Innovatech's voting shares transferred to Chloe effective immediately upon our I do's. 50% ownership of all current and future Innovatech intellectual property, including Nightingale and any damn thing my team and I ever dreamed up. Irrevocable even if we divorced after a single month. A $7 million spousal contribution and lifestyle maintenance payout, guaranteed, no matter how short the marriage or who was at fault, plus 30% of any future sale of the company. And the cherry on top, Chloe to be appointed to Innovatech as board, with a lovely little clause mandating that her brother, David, be hired as a chief strategy consultant on a $350,000 annual retainer. I felt a wave of nausea, then a surge of icy rage that was almost paralyzing. This was the woman I loved, the woman I was about to marry. I immediately screen shared it with Liam. His response was a string of expletives I'd never heard him use. I texted Brenda. The worst has happened. Stand by. Full details incoming. I printed both versions, the original FAIR document, and this declaration of war. Chloe waltzed in an hour later, humming, back from some charity gala planning meeting, a new Chanel bag swinging from her arm. I was sitting in the living room, the papers laid out on the coffee table like an indictment. My voice, when I spoke, was dangerously level, a tone she'd never heard from me. Chloe, I said, perhaps you can explain future-proofing underscore us underscore VE3 underscore confidential? She paled, the practiced nonchalance vanishing from her face as her eyes landed on the documents. Oh, that? She stammered, a blush rising on her cheeks. David's friend, he just made a few small tweaks for clarity to make sure my contributions are properly recognized. You know, contributions. My voice was like ice. I tapped the clauses one by one. Is demanding nearly half my company, control of every idea I've ever had or will have, and installing your grifter brother on my payroll for $350,000 a year recognizing contributions. Chloe? Or is it theft? What exact contribution are you referring to? The one where you act as a spy in my house, feeding information to your brother. Her composure shattered. The carefully constructed facade crumbled, and David's coaching came pouring out. My emotional labor, she cried, tears welling. My support, the sacrifices I'm making by marrying you. You're trying to devalue me, just like David said you would. He warned me you'd be like this, so threatened by a strong woman wanting her fair share. This is standard for high-value partnerships. Standard. I almost laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Brenda will shred this in court. This isn't standard, Chloe. This is fraud. This is a betrayal so profound, I don't even have words for it. The argument escalated, her voice rising in hysteria, mine dropping colder with every denial she offered. She accused me of financial abuse, of trying to control her, of never truly loving her. Finally, she grabbed her new Chanel bag, sobbing, I'm going to David's. He understands me. He'll know what to do. And she stormed out. The moment the door slammed, I was on the phone. Liam, Brenda, war room. My place. Now. Brenda's first words when she saw the document were, okay, Alex. This isn't just an altered prenup. It's attempted grand larceny with clear conspiracy. We go on the offensive, quietly, methodically, but decisively. Full lockdown on all your assets, all company information. Liam, I want a full forensic sweep of every system Chloe has ever had access to, personally or professionally. We assume David isn't just after what's in this sham document. He's after Innovatech itself. The game, as Brenda had predicted, had truly begun. Liam's forensic IT team worked through the night. The results, delivered the next morning, were a gut punch that left me reeling. Sophisticated spyware, a nasty little package of keyloggers and remote access Trojans, had been found on Chloe's laptop and phone, devices I'd gifted her, thinking I was being generous. It had been active for months, coinciding almost perfectly with David's reappearance in her life. The malware had been capturing her keystrokes, screen activity, even audio snippets when she was near me discussing Innovatech business. Data packets, small, encrypted, and cleverly disguised, containing sensitive Innovatech R&D details, confidential client lists, and even summaries of my private financial statements, had been regularly uploaded to an anonymous offshore server. The minor IT glitches we'd experienced, the server slowdown, the misdirected memo, they now looked like David testing his remote access, probing our defenses. My home, my conversations, my trust, all bugged, all violated. Chloe hadn't just been naive. She'd been a willing, or at least compliant, conduit for David's corporate espionage. The call started a day later. Chloe's parents, their voices laced with a new, firmer tone of disappointment in me. David explained everything, Alex, her mother said, a hint of steel in her voice. He showed us the changes to the prenup. They seemed perfectly reasonable for a woman marrying into such significant wealth. You're being incredibly selfish, dear, and frankly, rather controlling. Chloe is devastated by your lack of trust in her judgment. My own distant aunt, Marjorie, a notorious busybody, even called, clucking her tongue about how she'd heard from Chloe's mother that I was being terribly unfair and not thinking about Chloe's future security. The narrative was being spun, and I was the villain. The following week, I had a critical follow-up video conference scheduled with Mr. Henderson, the key potential investor for Innovatech's Series B funding. The deal was progressing, and this meeting was pivotal. Knowing David's MO, I anticipated he might try to disrupt it to create leverage or chaos. I had Brenda and Liam on a muted line, ready to act as my virtual backup. Sure enough, 10 minutes into my presentation on Nightingale's Q4 projections, Chloe's face popped up on the screen, uninvited. She looked artfully distressed, eyes red-rimmed. "Alex, darling," she began, her voice trembling, "we must talk. Mr. Henderson, I am so terribly sorry to interrupt your important meeting, but Alex is making decisions that will profoundly impact our future, our assets, without any consultation with me. This is about our partnership, our shared life." I kept my expression neutral, my voice calm and professional, a stark contrast to her display. "Mr. Henderson," I said, addressing him directly, "my profound apologies for this unexpected and highly inappropriate intrusion. I am currently navigating a challenging personal situation which, as you can see, involves external manipulation by a third party. I assure you, this will be handled with the utmost discretion and will not, in any way, impact Innovatech's operations or my commitment to our potential partnership." "Chloe," I turned my gaze to her image on the screen, "this is neither the time nor the place. We will discuss this privately later." As I spoke, I subtly signaled Liam. On his cue, Brenda, who had already liaised with the meeting platform's admin as part of our contingency plan, had Chloe professionally and swiftly removed from the call, a small pop-up message citing technical difficulties with participant connection. I turned back to Henderson. "Again, my apologies for that, Mr. Henderson. Some personal battles are unfortunately best fought off stage. Now, regarding those Q4 projections for Nightingale and our market expansion strategy." Henderson, a grizzled, old-school tycoon, leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Davies, life throws curveballs. How a man handles them says a lot more about him than a smooth presentation. Your composure under fire is noted. Let's proceed." Against all odds, my calm handling of her ambush seemed to have turned a potential disaster into a strange demonstration of my resilience. The moment the call with Henderson ended, my phone rang. It was Chloe, incandescent with rage. "How could you humiliate me like that in front of your important investor?" she shrieked. "Cutting me off. David is furious. He says you're deliberately trying to isolate me, to make me look foolish." I let her vent, the recording app on my phone silently capturing every word. "Chloe," I said quietly when she finally paused for breath, Your attempt to sabotage a multi-million-dollar business meeting was ill-advised and entirely based on David's desperate and destructive tactics. You really need to start thinking for yourself before he drags you down completely. A few days later, I received a summons, a formal-sounding text from Chloe's mother, to their house for a calm family discussion to clear the air. My gut screamed it was a setup, but Brenda advised me to go, to listen, to gather more information, and to remain unshakable. Let them play their hand, Alex, she'd said. Just don't let them bait you. It was worse than I imagined. I walked into their living room to find David enthroned on the sofa, Chloe beside him dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her parents looking stern and judgmental. Via a large television screen, several of Chloe's extended family members, aunts, uncles, a couple of cousins, were conferenced in, their faces a gallery of disapproval, clearly having been primed by David. David, oozing feigned concern, orchestrated the entire charade. Alex, he began, his voice dripping with insincere sympathy. We're all here because we love Chloe, and frankly, Alex, we're deeply concerned about your recent behavior. Your secrecy around Innovatech, your possessiveness over the finances, your utter unwillingness to treat Chloe as a true equal partner in this marriage. It's not healthy, son. It's indicative of a deeper issue of control. Chloe is heartbroken by your blatant lack of trust and your attempts to intimidate her. Chloe played her part to perfection, weeping softly, nodding at David's pronouncements. Her parents chimed in, parroting David's lines about fairness and security and how I was damaging their daughter with my unreasonable stance. They then presented me with yet another version of the prenup, a compromise, David called it. It was still grossly unfair, a slightly watered-down version of Chloe's wish list, a classic negotiation tactic designed to make me feel like I was gaining something by accepting a still terrible deal. I listened patiently, my expression unreadable. When they finally finished, I calmly addressed them. I appreciate your collective concern for Chloe, and for me, I began, my voice even. However, this entire unfortunate situation stems not from my actions, but from a fraudulent document that Chloe attempted to sneak past me, a document clearly orchestrated by David, evidence of which my lawyer now possesses in full. My so-called secrecy regarding Innovatech is, in fact, prudent protection of my company from what now appears to be active industrial espionage, another delightful element that seems to be part of David's playbook. There will be no signing of this or any other doctor document. And frankly, I let my gaze sweep across their faces, both in the room and on the screen. The fundamental trust required for any marriage to succeed has been irrevocably shattered. I stood up. Thank you for your time. And I walked out, refusing to be drawn into their gaslighting charade. The next day, I texted David directly. Your little amateur theater production at your parents' house was C-list at best. Meet me. Public place. Coffee. Tomorrow at 10. Just you and me. Or Brenda forwards her rather comprehensive corporate espionage file directly to the district attorney's office. Your call. The mention of corporate espionage clearly spooked him. He agreed immediately. We met at a busy downtown coffee shop. I got there first, chose a table in the middle of the room, and had my phone already recording audio before he arrived, swaggering in with a smug look that I was about to wipe off his face. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I laid out a couple of printed pages, a summary of Liam's malware report, and some anonymized server logs. This goes way beyond a greedy prenup, David, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. This is theft of intellectual property, conspiracy to defraud, serious felonies. David tried to bluster, his eyes darting around. You can't prove a thing. That's all circumstantial nonsense. Oh, I think we can prove quite a bit, I countered. But what I really want to understand is your precise endgame with Innovatech, beyond just facilitating Chloe's ambitions. Seeing the evidence, however summarized, clearly unnerved him more than he let on. His arrogance, his Achilles heel, made him overplay his hand. All right, fine, he sneered, leaning forward. So I helped my sister. She's family. She deserved a hell of a lot more than the crumbs you were offering. And yes, I was going to guide her business decisions. She needs someone sharp, someone with real-world savvy like me. Innovatech is a damn gold mine, and you tech nerds are absolutely clueless about how to really monetize an asset like that. She even agreed I should have a board seat and a healthy cut of her shares. With my guidance, she'd have eventually gotten it all. Then, the fatal slip. I was even exploring some lucrative opportunities to leverage Innovatech's unique data with other, shall we say, interested parties. He smirked, clearly thinking of TechForge. I calmly placed my phone, screen up, on the table between us, the recording app clearly visible and still running. Thanks for confirming your direct financial stake in defrauding me, David, I said, my voice devoid of emotion, and for admitting to planning to misuse proprietary company data with competitors. My lawyer, and I suspect the DA, will find this recording exceptionally illuminating. You're admitting to multiple federal crimes here. David's face went from smug red to a pasty, sickly white. He stared at the phone as if it were a snake. You recorded me? He choked out. That's illegal. You can't do that. He knew, or I suspected he knew, about one-party consent laws in our state. He lunged for the phone, but I was quicker, snatching it back. He stood up so abruptly his chair clattered to the floor, drawing stares. You'll pay for this, Davies, he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. You've just made a huge mistake. And then he practically fled the coffee shop. Immediately, I sent the pristine audio file to Brenda. Then, after a moment's consideration, I sent the recording, along with a brief, factual summary of the malware findings and a copy of the altered prenup, to Chloe's parents. My accompanying note was simple. This is the reality of what your son, and by extension your daughter, have been engaged in. I suggest you listen carefully. The ball was now rolling downhill fast. Hearing David's own voice on that recording, boasting about his plan to profit from Chloe, his scheme to siphon funds from Innovatech, his casual admission of trying to sell company secrets, finally, irrevocably, shattered her parents' denial. The carefully constructed image of David as the misunderstood victim, the wise older brother, imploded. They were, by all accounts from Jessica later, horrified, ashamed, and incandescent with rage, mostly at David, but also at Chloe for her complicity and their own blindness. A massive family schism erupted that day. Brenda, meanwhile, wasn't idle. Armed with Liam's forensic IT reports and David's damning coffee shop confession, she engaged a top-tier cybersecurity firm. Their findings were swift and chilling. They traced the anonymous offshore server David had been using and uncovered an encrypted communication channel. On the other end, a known data broker with established ties to TechForge, one of Innovatech's most aggressive and, at times, unscrupulous competitors. The cybersecurity team found evidence that David, operating under a slick alias, had already passed on early-stage architectural details of Nightingale and was in active negotiation for a substantial seven-figure payout for more comprehensive data, specifically timed to coincide with Innovatech's upcoming Series B funding round. His plan was clear: sabotage Innovatech, devalue it, or give TechForge a critical competitive edge, all for his own enrichment. This wasn't just a messy domestic dispute anymore. This was full-blown, active corporate espionage with a clear trail of evidence. For me, that was the absolute point of no return. This wasn't just about a broken heart or a deceitful fiancé. This was a calculated attack on my life's work, on the future of my employees, on everything I'd built. Brenda, I told her, my voice hard as stone, shut it all down. Protect Innovatech. No mercy. Pursue every legal avenue available against both of them. Brenda drafted a legal notice that was a masterpiece of controlled fury and irrefutable fact. It was delivered by courier simultaneously to Chloe at her parents' house, where she'd taken refuge, and to David's last known address, with copies also sent to their parents for their full awareness. The document was unequivocal. It detailed the immediate and irrevocable termination of the engagement, a comprehensive citation of the fraudulently altered prenup, the irrefutable evidence of the spyware planted on Chloe's devices, David's recorded confession detailing his conspiracy, and the damning evidence of their active corporate espionage ring targeting Innovatech. An immediate demand for the return of the engagement ring, a priceless heirloom from my grandmother, and all other gifts exceeding $1,000 in value that I had given Chloe during our relationship. Formal, non-negotiable notice for Chloe to vacate my property, where she had been living, within 14 days. And, most critically, a clear notification that all compiled evidence had been formally turned over to federal authorities regarding the corporate espionage and to state authorities concerning conspiracy to commit fraud. The fallout was immediate and explosive. Chloe received the legal package and completely unraveled. My phone blew up with a torrent of calls and hundreds of texts from her, a chaotic, desperate mess of tearful apologies, hysterical blame shifting onto David. He made me do it, Alex. I was scared of him. He manipulated me. Threats of self-harm if I didn't reconsider, followed by venomous accusations of my cruelty and inhumanity for destroying her life. I recorded every call, every voicemail, and forwarded every text to Brenda, but I only communicated with Chloe through my lawyer. There was nothing left for me to say to her directly. David, realizing the true gravity of the situation and the very real threat of federal prison time, corporate espionage carries heavy penalties, went to ground. He vanished. His parents, now fully aware of the extent of his depravity, reportedly refused to help him or disclose his whereabouts, if they even knew. Then came Chloe's final act of spite, her last grab. The emergency Amex card I'd given her, the one with the $20,000 limit for true emergencies, suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. Over a single weekend, she managed to charge over $25,000, a whirlwind of high-end designer boutiques, untraceable gift cards, spa packages, and even hefty cash advances at casino ATMs. Liam, who was meticulously monitoring all my financials, flagged it first thing Monday morning. I looked at the live transaction feed, a cold fury settling in me. As Chloe was likely still swiping that card, I was on a recorded call with the Amex fraud department, reporting the card stolen and all recent activity as unauthorized and vindictive, providing them with the context of the acrimonious breakup and her documented attempts at fraud. They immediately froze the card and launched an investigation. My liability, they assured me, would be minimal. Chloe's last act of financial revenge was, largely, on American Express. Innovatech was now my sole focus. With Brenda and Liam, we work around the clock. We informed Innovatech's board of the situation in a closed-door emergency session. They were shocked by the personal betrayal I'd endured, but unanimously supportive of all actions taken to protect the company. We immediately implemented sweeping security upgrades, changed all high-level access codes, and brought in the cybersecurity firm for a complete overhaul. The transparency with which we handled the internal crisis, without revealing specific personal details, actually seemed to boost employee morale and loyalty. They knew their leadership was fighting to protect them and their work. The final, damning piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Jessica, Chloe's younger sister. She was 28, quieter than Chloe, more observant, and had always maintained a subtle, wary distance from David's manipulative charm. She contacted Brenda a week after the legal notices went out, clearly distressed. After the explosive family confrontation where her parents had finally faced the truth about David, Jessica had gone to their house. David had stored some old boxes in their attic, and in a fit of wanting to purge his presence, Jessica had started going through them. Tucked away in an old college trunk, she found a series of David's personal journals and notebooks, dating back years. What they contained was a chilling insight into his psyche. There were pages filled with bitter, envious screeds about successful people he knew, resentful accounts of his failed business ventures, where he invariably blamed everyone but himself, and disturbingly detailed, cynical plans from long before he'd re-entered Chloe's life about how to identify and leverage a well-off connection through a susceptible family member. There were specific, unsettlingly accurate notes about Chloe's known insecurities, her desire for a lavish lifestyle, her susceptibility to flattery, her underlying fear of not measuring up, and how Alex, with his burgeoning success, was the perfect long-term target. It was cold, calculated, and showed a terrifying level of premeditation to exploit his own sister. Jessica, horrified, photocopied the relevant pages and delivered them to Brenda. This wasn't just opportunism. This was sociopathy laid bare. The legal wheels turned. David was eventually apprehended by federal agents trying to board a flight to a non-extradition country using a fake passport. He faced a slew of federal charges for corporate espionage and wire fraud, on top of state charges for conspiracy. The evidence against him, now including Jessica's bombshell discovery of his journals, was overwhelming. His life, as he knew it, was over. Chloe, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. Legally compelled by court order, she returned my grandmother's engagement ring, after initially trying to claim it was a non-conditional gift, and with a final burst of theatrics, vacated my apartment, leaving it in a state of disarray. Her desperate attempts to sue me for defamation, breach of promise to marry, and emotional distress were summarily dismissed by a judge who was presented with Brenda's concise summary of the mountain of evidence against her. Humiliated, her reputation in tatters among anyone who knew the truth, she was forced to move back in with her shell-shocked and deeply disappointed parents. Her relationship with Jessica became understandably strained, almost non-existent. Her parents insisted she begin intensive therapy. Months later, long after the dust had begun to settle, I ran into Chloe by chance at a downtown coffee shop we both used to frequent. She looked different, subdued, thinner, the artificial brightness gone from her eyes. She approached my table hesitantly. "Alex," she said, her voice quiet, almost a whisper. I know an apology means very little after everything, but I am truly, deeply sorry. David, he twisted me up. Yes, but I let him. I was weak, I was greedy, I was foolish, and I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to understand why I made those choices." I listened, a strange mix of emotions swirling within me, a distant echo of the love I once felt, a profound sadness for the waste of it all, but mostly a calm, unshakable resolve. "Chloe," I said, my voice even, "I hear you, and I genuinely hope you find your way, that you learn from this. But the damage you did, the trust you irrevocably broke, that's not something that can be undone with an apology. Forgiveness is a long and complicated road, and honestly, I'm not there. My life has moved on. I suggest you focus on doing the same." It was a polite but firm severing of any lingering connection. She nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, then turned and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw her. Innovatech, against all odds, thrived. The Series B funding round, spearheaded by Mr. Henderson who, as it turned out, deeply respected my handling of the crisis, was oversubscribed and even larger than initially anticipated. Character Davies, he'd boomed at the closing dinner. That's the rarest commodity in business. You've got it. Nightingale 2.0 launched 6 months later to critical acclaim and record sales, solidifying our position as market leaders. I implemented new, far more rigorous personal and professional vetting processes. I became more guarded, certainly, but also more appreciative of true loyalty, the kind shown by Liam, Brenda, and my incredible team at Innovatech who'd stood by me. A year after Chloe walked out of my life for the last time, I found myself giving the keynote speech at a university tech entrepreneurship forum. Looking out at the eager young faces, I shared some lessons learned, not just about business but about life. Trust, I told them, my voice resonating with hard-won conviction, is the most valuable asset you will ever build, and tragically, the easiest to lose. Guard fiercely, invest it wisely, and when it's broken, if you're lucky enough to get a second chance at building something new, have the courage to build it on an even stronger, more resilient foundation.